If you haven't heard of these terms before, it's fine. Me and Bhaskar will try our level best to make it easy for you and build your foundation before we go into the next bit. Okay. Now, what does this course look like? So these are the four major areas, four major study areas where we'll talk about managed identity and access, secure networking, secure compute storage and database, and manage security operations. Bit of a typo here. I'll report it. Now, every topic is going to be per day. So day one, we'll talk about identity. So today, all day, we'll talk about identity. Tomorrow, we'll talk about networking, which is my favorite bit. On the third day, we'll talk more about storage and databases. On the last day, we talk about security operations, how we do monitoring, what are the different tools that help you monitor. So we'll talk about that. From an exam perspective, and I know some people are here for exam as well. Let me do a quick poll. How many people are here for exam, or let me launch a poll. So I just want to understand what's your aim. Is it knowledge to help you at work? Is it certificate, or both? I'm just gonna look at chat. I've started a new poll. Most of the people are saying both of the above mentioned, and that's how I also think it should be. Awesome. So most of the people are saying both. Now, thank you for your input. We will basically customize this training according to both. Now, from an exam perspective, every topic has some weightage. So identity has around 25 to 30% of weightage, whereas networking is again 20 to 25%, compute is again 20 to 25, and secure operations is again 25 to 30%. Higher the percentage, the more questions you will see from that area, because percentages indicate the relative weight of each exam on the area. We will talk much about the exams on the last day again. So if you have questions regarding, hey Ame, what about vouchers? What about exam? How are the questions gonna be like? Can you help me how to schedule the exam? We'll talk about it on the last day. Now, Microsoft has a lot of certifications. So how we expect you to do is have your fundamental certificates first. So start with your fundamental certificates first, then move on to associate. Either it can be an easy 104 or a security one. It's fine. So you have your Azure Security Engineer, and once you have your associate, go for the architect expert level certifications, which are basically designed for solution building for architects who are building solutions for compute, network, storage, and security. Whereas associate is basically designed for sysadmins, Azure security admins, implement and monitor and maintain security infra. Foundational is to build your foundation so you can start having more knowledge. Okay. Now, how are the next 4 days going to look like? So next 4 days, today is day one. So day one, we'll do some introductions like we just did. We'll move on to identity part. So we'll talk about Azure AD, the differences, ADDS, how we can set up a hybrid scenario. So we'll talk about identity more specifically today. And Bhaskar will be running the course, the other senior trainer that I have. So Bhaskar will be running day one today. I will be back for day two, where we'll talk about networking in depth. How does Azure networking look like? How do we do subnetting? What are firewalls? How you can manage firewalls? How do policies look like? So day two would be me talking about networking. Day three, again, we'll have Bhaskar again talking about keyword, databases, service endpoints. And day four would be me again, where we'll talk about monitor, defender for cloud, and we'll talk a bit more about the exam as well, the voucher, everything. Okay. you have some questions? Ame, when would we get break? Now, every 1 to 1.5 hour, me or Bhaskar will try to give you a 15 minutes break. But in case things get a little overwhelming and you're like, oh, this is too much knowledge for me. It's too much knowledge. Just put it in the chat. Hey, we need a break now. It's too much to take in. We just need a break. And it's a democracy, and we respect how you feel. So breaks are up to you. So if a majority of the people are saying, hey, we need a break, we'll have a break. Lunch would be around 12 o'clock Australia time. So 12 to 1 or 12 to 12:45 generally would be lunch all the days. All 4 days we'll have 12 to 1 as our lunch. I know a lot of you are working simultaneously and you have your other things going on in the background. If there is an important meeting that you have to attend, it's totally fine. Just put it on the chat. Hey, I have an important meeting to attend for an hour or so. I'm just going to be on hold for some time. It's totally fine. Now, the next thing is about labs. We have labs for you today. So after 2 o'clock or 2:30 every day, we are dedicating it for lab sessions. So we'll have 2 hours or 2.5 hours of labs every day. We'll talk about labs more around 2 o'clock today. Labs are super important. Both me and Bhaskar are very lab oriented. We totally feel labs is the place you actually learn. Theory is just taking in. Labs is where you actually do stuff. And they are really good labs. So we'll help you with labs, setting up the labs, how to access the labs, everything end to end. So don't stress about it. We'll answer all your questions regarding labs at around 2 o'clock today. Okay. During the course, we will keep giving you some material. I would highly recommend whatever material that we give, just keep putting it in a small notepad or notebook, wherever you can. We'll keep giving you a lot of links because we are not just looking at exam perspective, we are also looking at from your work perspective. We'll give you links which will help you for deployments or for your secure tools or securing your postures. So whatever links that we give, just note it down in the chat somewhere that, hey, these are the important links that Ame or Bhaskar gave me. We'll give you a lot of links from Microsoft Learn, Azure documentation, forum. We'll give you tons and tons of links, so don't stress about it. Okay. Now, one more thing, which is the most common question for people who are doing this course for the first time. Hey, Ame, would you be giving me your slides? Unfortunately, I can't give you the slides. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this link, which is the Microsoft Learn path. This is super important. If you scroll down in this link, you will find the content similar to the slides, but in a bit more depth. Slides sometimes is just one word or two words and me or Bhaskar discussing about it. If you want to actually read after this session is done, do follow the Learn path. It's brilliant. We put a lot of effort into the Learn path. The content on the Learn path is very, very synchronous with the content on the slide. So this Learn path is super important. Save it somewhere because this is going to help you a lot. You can take free practice exams also here, schedule your exam also, which we talked about on the last day. But take a note of this Learn path. Okay, one last thing before we begin. If you have, because we are around 40 participants, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. But because there are around 40 people, just raise your hand on the Teams first. So just raise your hand before you come off mute. We recommend or we request you not to come off mute directly because it interferes with the instructor's flow and chain of thoughts. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to ask that question. If you don't want to wait or if you feel shy about coming off mute, pop it in the chat. Pop your question in the chat and we'll answer those questions. from the chat as well. I'm going to be in the background today, so all the questions that you have, I will answer in the chat directly. So request to not come off mute. And this is not going to be a one-to-many discussion. This is not going to be a one-to-many discussion. I want this to be basically where you ask us questions and we basically discuss it all together. It's not going to be one-to-many where we just read out the slides. So please feel free to come off mute and ask us as many questions as possible. There is a chance we might not know the answer, but we assure you that if you don't know the answer, we'll park it in the sort of a parking lot and we'll get back to you with the answer following day, 100%. Okay. So before we begin, any questions for me? Are we good? Are we excited? Are we good? Any questions? Now is the time. Don't be shy. You're in a very, very safe space. So, okay, awesome. All right, thanks, y'all. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so let us begin. I'm going to hand it over to Bhaskar. Let's try to ask as many questions as possible. And let's have a good discussion in the next 4 days. And that's how we have fun. And that's how we learn and make the best out of these 4 days. Okay, Bhaskar, over to you. Take it over.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. Guys, please confirm if I'm loud and clear. And you can see the PPTs I shared. Thank you. Thank you so much. Free confirmation. That's fine. So let's proceed. As Amaz said, we're gonna talk about identity and access management. As in our traditional or legacy infra, we used to have the things on premises, and corporate network used to be security perimeter. That is changed now. When we say cloud, especially public cloud, things are not on premises. Those are not within the corporate network. So identity has become a new security perimeter. So how we can secure identities, we're gonna talk about that all the stuff here. Okay, so let's talk about that. Module 1, these are some lessons in there. We're gonna talk about Azure Active Directory, what Azure Active Directory is, and if we compare it with the traditional or legacy directory service given by Microsoft, that is ADDS. Initially, it was introduced in Windows 2000. So what are the differences if we compare with that ADDS things? We're gonna talk about that stuff here, and then hybrid identities, the approach. Further, we're gonna talk about identity protection. What is that? Sometimes I found people have some incorrect impressions. There are some FAQs related with identity protections. I'll talk about that stuff, and then identity governance is the last thing in the module we're going to talk about. So, Azure Active Directory. Before I start the discussion with the Azure Active Directory, let's take the idea about the infra or the network we used to have earlier. So initially, when networking was just started, we used to have peer-to-peer networking. In a peer-to-peer networking, every server used to be an island. Means these are the machines connected with one centralized device. You can call it hub or switch, and machines or the devices are connected to. After configuring the logical components, we have a network. Machines can communicate to each other. But in this approach, let's say this is the guy who is administering the thing, and new employee join the company, and this guy gonna work as a backup operator or as a backup administrator, where he or she needs to configure backup, initiate the backup on each and every machine. So in this environment, he or she is required to log on each and every machine. So the guy who is administering this whole stuff need to create the user account, as every server is an island. So this guy need to create the user account on each and every machine. And further, whatsoever the configuration need to be done, that will be done on each and every machine. This guy role is to configure the backup, so have to configure or have to give the role of backup administrator, which is not a really tough job. But if we have a more number of the computer systems, 50, 100, 200, thousands, the simple job will convert into cumbersome. There will be a myriad of the task you're gonna do on each and every machine. So to give the centralizations, there was a service introduced that was called Active Directory. Initially, we used to call it Active Directory, but in the server 2008, we start calling it ADDS. And what it actually did, it gives us gave us the centralization. Centralization of what? Centralization of triple A, where first A stands for authentication, second A stands for authorization, auth N, auth Z, and accountabilities. Somewhere you'll find it as like auditing. So you call it auditing or you call it accountabilities. So what did happen when we install this ADDS? We install this ADDS thing or this role on one of the machines. Post installation of this ADDS role or Active Directory, this machine starts sharing its security database and create one logical boundary which we call as a domain. Further, we keep on adding the machine in that logical boundary, and it can expand to entire data center and can expand to across the site as well. So we get the beauty of centralized AAA. As earlier, we were forced to create the user account of this backup administrator on each and every machine. Now we are not required to do that. We can do it on a just single machine. That's a DC domain controller, where we have installed Active Directory. And now, from here only, we can control what are the machines this guy can log in on, and what he or she can do on that on those machines. So, at the first glance or quick glance, we get the idea what it's gonna do. It's gonna simplify the job of the administrators. But if we talk about the structure of this ADDS thing, it has a complex structure. How come? When we install Active Directory first time, we get the DC in a domain, that domain in a tree, the tree in a forest. And if we follow the approach, no single point failure should be there. It means we need to have multiple machines for DC. Multiple machine means multiple servers are there. Multiple server, multiple operating system license we need to purchase, multiple operating system we need to manage. And that's not the end of the complexity we do have here. Within the Active Directory, we have a lot of stuff to manage. Multiple DC, so we need to keep them in a sync. For that, we have been given an inbuilt replication engine, which gives us the two type of the replication, intra-site, inter-site replications, where we synchronize something which is called AD partitions. We call it naming context as well. That initially we had three type of the partitions, configuration partition, domain partitions, schema partition. In a Windows 2003, one more partition was introduced, that was application partition. Still not end. We have FSMOs, flexible single master operations, as multiple DCs are there. So we need someone to define the responsibilities. We have been given a FSMO's operation master role, which can be categorized in two categories, domain-wide, forest-wide, and that further can be categorized, or there are total 5 types of the roles. 2 out of them are forest-wide, and the rest of other 3 are domain-wide. So a lot of stuff is in there. As far as the protocol, communication protocol is concerned, ADDS is the one which works on LDAP protocol. Mainly two services are provided by authentication authorizations. So for authentication authorization, it uses Kerberos version 5 protocol. Both job, be it your authentication or authorization. Authentication process to verify the identities means right person, right device, right application is trying to access the things. And then further, okay, right person, right device, right application is there. What is the level of the access given to? So authorization define that. Both are the process, one actually check it out, whether right or whether it's not a compromised account, it is not a, just check it out, right person is trying to access. Bhaskar is the guy who is trying to log in. And then further, what is the level of the access given to him? That is done in authorization. So Kerberos version 5 is the protocol used in that. So ADDS gives us the simplified administration, but it has the complex structure. When cloud things came in the picture, we got the another type of the Active Directory. And that Active Directory is called Azure Active Directory. So as we said, ADDS is the one which has the complex structure. Azure Active Directory has the flat structure. Means here no DC need to manage. No DCs, I would say no DC, and in ADDS we had one container which was called as OU, so no OUs required, no GPUs, no partitions need to manage, no need to think about synchronization or replication, no need to think about FSMOs, not at all. What was the objective to get ADDS on roll? We wanted to have the centralization. So we are getting that AAA here as well. So ADDS, when we talk about Azure Active Directory, basically it is a managed service, where ADDS is the one which we manage, we define the number of the DCs, the scope, everything we define in that. Here we get it as a managed service. Sometimes I found people have the impression when we say managed service, some of the people have the impression it is a managed instance of ADDS. There is only the difference between ADDS and Azure Active Directory is there we manage everything. Now platform is managing the things, but ultimately we are using the same service. No, that's not correct. Azure Active Directory and ADDS, these are the two different services. It is not just the managed instance of ADDS. Yes, please. Is there anything? Yes, please. I can see the virtual hand. No. Okay. So, talking about Azure Active Directory, no replication, not at all. And it is not the managed instance of ADDS. It is a managed service, but not managed instance of ADDS. As I said, ADDS is the one which works on LDAP protocol, and for authentication authorization, it uses Kerberos version 5 for both sides. Azure Active Directory is a web-based service. It works on HTTP, HTTPS, and uses protocol which are known as OIDCs for authentication and OAuth version 2 for authorization. Right person, right device, right application is trying to connect. OIDC gonna do that job. Open identity connect. And then the level of the access given to that identity, that application, that device, that user, OAuth version 2 gonna do that job. No DCs, no OUs, no group policies, totally flat structure, unlike ADDS. We get the managed service here when we say Azure Active Directory in contrast of ADDS. But again, let me just reiterate, it is not the managed instance of ADDS. Why I am emphasizing on it? Because I found people have this impression of a lot of time. So let's talk about that, the features given in there. This part I have covered, the role we have been given, how we can grant the access to the users, and then further we're going to talk about Azure ADDS. What is that? Further, how we can create the user account, group accounts, what is the administrative unit, other things. So Azure Active Directory is the multi-tenant cloud-based directory service. So we get the easy-to-use solution. We need to manage the credential of our employees, our business partners. We need to grant them single sign-on access. We may have the number of the applications which we are using in our environment. Azure Active Directory is going to provide the services to them. For services, authentication, authorizations, accountabilities. So we get the full suite of the identity management in Azure Active Directory, where we can have the multi-factor authentications, where we can have the device registrations, we can manage the user account, we can manage the group accounts, and for those users, groups, devices, application we can have the RBAC approach. RBAC stands for role-based access control. Okay, when we say role-based access control or RBAC, that's an approach followed by all the organizations nowadays for almost all the applications or the solution they are using. And whenever we talk about RBAC, basically there are three questions we answer at the time of defining the RBAC. Question what, question where, and other question can be who or whom. Means what access we are granting, permission, what will be the scope of that permission, boundary of that permission, and whom we are granting to. So identities. Identity is an object which is used for authentication in Active Directory, be it your ADDS or Azure Active Directory. That can be for the user, devices, application. There is one more type of the identity here we do have. Let's park it in our parking lot for the other module, probably on day 3. That is a managed identities. The scope, we are granting the access in Azure Active Directory, or we are granting the access in a downside of the hierarchy. If you guys have completed AZ-900, you have the idea about the hierarchy we do have. At the last of the module, I'll talk about that. So we can grant the access on the downside of the hierarchy, we say it ARM or Azure, or we can grant the access on Azure Active Directory itself. So define the scope, and yes, we're gonna perform those kind of the tasks and things. We define the set of the permission which we call as a role. So we can use it, this Active Directory thing, we can use it for RBAC purpose, granting the single sign-on access to the 1,000 of the applications which can be registered, which are pre-registered with Azure Active Directories, example, Office 365, Salesforce, ARM, Azure Management, these are the things we can use it. So we get the full suite of the identity management, including MFA, device registrations, privilege account management. We can keep eyes on what's going on. So application uses monitoring, we get auditing, security, alerting. Sometimes people have the question, what if we have on-premises Active Directory, ADDS thing, and our user accounts, device account have been created within that. So later on, organization moved on cloud, they purchased some of the cloud services. Along with that, we got the Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, so which gives us the one more instance of Active Directory. So yes, Azure Active Directory can be integrated with the existing AD solutions we do have, which is known as Windows Server Active Directory or ADDS, whatever you call it. So that gives us the ability to leverage the existing on-premises identity investment or the configuration we have done, where we will managing the access. So those identities can be synchronized to Azure Active Directory, and then further we can manage the access of those identities to cloud applications, whatsoever to the application we are using. There's one more point I need to talk about Azure Active Directory. When we purchase cloud services, Microsoft cloud services, be it your M365 or Azure subscription, along with these cloud subscriptions, cloud services, we get the Active Directory instance. Other than that, we have two more additions. So there are 4 additions in total. One is called free. Free is the one which we get along with Azure subscription, where we can manage 500,000 objects. Up to 500,000 objects can be managed in a free edition of Active Directory. The another edition we do have, that is Microsoft 365 edition, which was earlier known as Office 365 edition. So clear by the name, this is the addition of Azure Active Directory, which we get along with the M365 subscriptions, where there is no bar, no limit of the number of the objects. Other than these two, there are 2 more paid editions which are called Premium P1, no bar, to manage the number of the objects, be it your user, groups, devices, applications, and other than that, we get some features like conditional access. We'll talk about that, what conditional access is. We get the dynamic group account, SSPR for on-premises users, write back, these all capabilities we get. Plus, there is one more that is called Premium P2. So whatsoever the features available in a Premium P1, those are available in a Premium P2. Other than that, we get the identity protection, and we get the identity governance. So these are the 4 additions of Azure Active Directory. We can go with the freeware, or we can purchase the license. And further, that license can be assigned to the users. Okay, we may have 100, 200, 1,000 of the users. Further, out of those 1,000 users, let's say we assign premium license to 500 users, or 700, or 300. So we pay for the number of the users the premium license is being used for. Okay. So freeware is there, plus we can go to the paid edition of Azure Active Directory. This is the one I talked about. Be it your ADDS solution, be it your Azure Active Directory, both going to give us the user account, provide us the group account to manage the users, the devices. And what we get in there, we get the authentication authorizations. When we talk about this ADDS thing, it uses a Kerberos version protocol, Kerberos version 5. NTLM is also there for backward compatibilities. Azure Active Directory gives us the OpenID Connect for authentication, authorization. Other than that, it supports WS federations, SIML protocols, security acceleration markup languages. Provide the authentication to Azure resources, M365 resources. Yes, please. Go ahead, please. Okay. There's a question in the chat, and Amir has already answered that. Thank you. Guys, please use mic carefully. If there is any question, let me know. Okay. I believe someone mistakenly unmuted that. So this is the part I talked about. We get that stuff. Yeah. Before I further move, Azure Active Directory, when we purchase Azure subscription, we get the Active Directory that set up a tenant for us. Tenant is the one which represent the organizations. So we get the Active Directory instance that we call as a tenant, which represent the organization. And if we talk about this tenant, it's going to have the name xyz.onmicrosoft.com. When we say this name given in there, xyz.onmicrosoft.com, sometime, not even sometime, most of the time, people or organization like to go with their own suffix. They want to have their own name. So we have the choice. We have been given a custom domain name option. By purchasing a domain name, we can edit here, verify the ownership of that, and then in place of this xyz.onmicrosoft.com, we can start using the one which we want to use for our organization, like a contoso.com, adatum.com, microsoft.com, yahoo.com. In that way, we can purchase the name, domain name, and then we can edit it here and start using it. Okay. Further, we do have the services, the applications, like Azure we have, then the hierarchy of that, or we can have an M365, Intune, Salesforce. This is the stuff. Okay. Many similarities, but the differences are also there. Differences, if we talk about flat structure, is one of them. So user account, group account are created in a flat structures. There is no OU. There is no GPOs here. Okay, so you can use it. Communication protocol, HTTP, HTTPS. In place of LDAP. Authentication protocol, OIDCs, and OAuth version 2. Now, so that's a hierarchy we do have here. If we talk about Azure Active Directory, gives us the instant Active Directory instance, which we call tenant, the name of that, we already know xyz dot on microsoft.com. We can change it to whatsoever we want. And then further, we have, like, if I talk about Azure things, we have root management group, and then subscriptions. Within the subscription, we're going to have one container, or like depend on the resources, we can have multiple containers, that is called resource group. And then further, within the resource group, we have the resources. So to organize the resources, we have been given a container that is called resource group, which is mandatory to create. At least one resource group has to be there. But based on the region, based on the application, based on the department, we can create the resource group, multiple resource group, and organize the resources within there. Let's say we have a different infra, different environment. Yeah, go with that. And here I said subscriptions. So multiple subscriptions can be there, right? And those subscriptions also we might need to organize for different uses. Let's say we have 50 subscriptions. Some of them we are using for production environment. Some of them we are using for dev and then QA. So to organize these all subscriptions, in order to define RBAC, in order to define different policies based on the infra, we have been given one more container that is called management group. That's optional. We need it, we can create it. Otherwise, we'll have a subscription in a default management group given in there. So we need to grant the access to the users, create in an Active Directory. On downside of the hierarchy, we have been given the role for the same, which are called Azure role. And we need to grant the access on Azure Active Directory portions. We have been given AD roles. AD roles are the one which are used to grant the access on Active Directory tenant. For the downside of the hierarchy, Azure roles are there. Both roles can be categorized in two categories, built-in and the custom. When we say built-in, means the role which we get along with that solution, along with Active Directory, along with the Azure subscription. Custom is the one which we create, because sometimes built-in role do not satisfy our requirement. We need something else. Then we can create our own set of the permission which we call as custom role. So the built-in role given for the Azure Active Directory, the example are global administrators, security administrator, billing administrator. These are some of the example of role in Azure Active Directory. When we say global administrator, I found people have the impression. Okay, let's take the idea about that. So what do you think what the global administrator is? What is the scope of the permission given to this global administrator guy? Anyone, please?
Is it like a root of AD?
Root of AD. Okay. Global administrator can do all the things in Azure AD. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So that's the kind of the root user account, as you said, as you guys said. This is the guy which has the full-on administrative access on Azure Active Directory. I found sometimes people have the impression global administrator has the access globally, as its name says, which is, I believe there can be a correction in there, because when we talk about global administrators, yes, it has the access, full access on Azure Active Directory tenant, but the downside of the hierarchy I talked about here, Azure things, root management group, then there can be management groups as well, then subscriptions are there, resource groups are there, and within those resource groups, we have the resources. By default, on the downside of the hierarchy, global administrator does not have the access on. question arises why people have the impression it has the access globally. There can be two reasons for the same. One reason is its name, global administrator. We simply translate that and get the impression it's going to have the access globally. And second reason, which I believe quite genuine, by default, global administrator does not have the access on the downside of the hierarchy, but all the global administrator users, means the user who have the global administrator, have the kind of the veto power. That is called elevated access. As and when required, they can enable elevated access, and when they enable elevated access on the downside of the hierarchy, on the root itself, they get the one privilege, one role that is called user access administrator. That's the ARM role or Azure role. And if anyone has that role, can grant the access to anyone. So let's say I'm a global administrator. If I enable this elevated access, it means I'll get the user access administrator privilege on the root of this Azure subscriptions. Means the scope is really wide. And then further, whomsoever I want to grant the access, I can. If I want to grant the access to myself, yes, I can. So this is why people have the impression global administrator has the access globally, but technically on the downside of the hierarchy, no. This is the guy which is a full-on administrator of Azure Active Directory. But as a pre-class account, for breaking class account purpose or something, we have been given the elevated access. And regardless of what rights have been given to you, we always follow least access privilege. So whenever it is not required, global administrator is supposed to keep this veto power disabled. There is no official term as veto power. That is called elevated access, but that makes more sense. So this is why I'm using that. Okay, so full-on administrator on Azure Active Directory. On downside of the hierarchy, it may have the access or may not have the access. So saying it, global administrator has access globally, administrative privilege globally, that is something I believe technically incorrect. Further, other roles are there like application administrator, application developer, authentication administrators. So who's gonna do the specific job? Like application administrator means the user who have this application administrator role can create or manage the all aspect of the applications registered with Azure Active Directory. They can do the application registrations, they can do the application proxies. If you see the list of the roles given in Azure Active Directory, we have one more there that is called Cloud Application Administrator. So the difference between application administrator and cloud application administrator is cloud application administrator are not able to configure application proxy settings. There may be some on-premises applications registered with the Azure Active Directory. There may be some non-Azure applications. Cloud application administrator is not able to do that job. So basically, we follow the approach least access should be given. This is why we have been given a multiple roles in there, built-in role in there. Okay, billing administrator is the one which can purchase, manage the subscription, can create the support ticket. Global reader is the one which can read all the settings, can access the administrative information, but cannot make any changes in that. So number of the roles are there, but even after these number of the roles, sometimes it happens the built-in role we have been given in there are not able to satisfy the requirement, the need we do have. So we can create the custom role as well. Custom role is the one means we create it on our own. We pick the permissions and that set of the permission we saved with a specific name. When we talk about custom role in Azure Active Directory, there can be two ways to create that. One is we create it from scratch. When we say from scratch, means we're gonna pick the permission and we're gonna save it. In place of going with this approach, we can go with another approach that is called clone. We can clone our role. But when we talk about clone our role in Azure Active Directory, we can clone a custom role only. In a downside of the hierarchy as well, we have two types of the role, built-in and custom. But when we talk about custom, yeah, cloning can be done, be it your built-in role or the custom role. But in Azure Active Directory, we can clone a custom role only. And one more point, we can create a custom role only when we have the paid addition. The freeware we do have, but we cannot create the custom role. One more directions we do have. Which is called Azure ADDS. So we know ADDS, what ADDS is. That's the on-premises directory service. Not always on-premises because it can be on Azure virtual machines as well. So rather than saying it on-premises, it is better if we say it Windows-based ADDS solution. There we're gonna manage the DCs, we're gonna manage each and everything, whatever the configuration we want to have, the replication, managing the FSMOs, that all is stuff we need to do. Lately, we are given the managed ADDS. When we say Azure Active Directory Domain Service, it is the managed instance of ADDS. That gives us the managed domain service like our domain join, group policies we need to have in there. We want to have LDAP or Kerberos authentications. That means we need authentication which is fully compatible with the Windows Active Directories. Yeah, we can just go with that. We can use this service without deploying any DC, without managing that. We are not required to think about the operating system of those DC machines, patching them. Not at all. We get it as a managed service, but not HTTP or HTTPS based service. We get the LDAP based service, which integrate with our existing Azure Active Directory tenant. So, yes, it is possible for users to sign in using their existing credentials. So Azure Active Directory is the one which is a cloud-based solutions. ADDS, when we say, that's a Windows-based solution. One more layer is in there which will give us the ADDS solution that is called Azure ADDS solutions, which integrate with the Azure Active Directory, so can synchronize the on-premises ADDS environment. We get the centralized management using that. Okay, so we're gonna replicate the identities information from Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory tenant, which are in the cloud environment. So simplified deployment is a one thing. We get the managed domain for Azure Active Directories. We are not required to think about what is that called? Single point failures. No need to configure high availability, I mean to say. We are not required to think about fault tolerance, scalabilities, not at all. A solution where we get the health detections, remediations, auto sync with Azure Active Directory. We are not required to configure something which is called Azure AD Connect. Okay. Domain joins, smart card authentications, the features which are given by Azure Active Directory, which are given by ADDS solutions, we can get that when we deploy the managed instance of ADDS. Group policies is also one example. We can just go with that. As it is a ADDS solution, so yes, NTLM, Kerberos authentication we can get in there. No need to think about high availabilities. You simply go there, deploy it, and start using it. So that's one more solution for the Active Directory itself. Now, the ultimate goal is to manage the identities. As I said, what identity is, that's an object which is used for authentication and authorization purpose. Identities can be three types, actually four types. One is user accounts we create, devices we register, we integrate with the Azure Active Directory, and application or the services. So when we say users, yeah, there can be three types of the user accounts. The user account which we create in a cloud, I mean say Azure Active Directory, those are called cloud users. But we had the on-premises environment already. When we purchased that Azure things, Azure subscription, we had the on-premises environment where ADDS was already deployed, working, where we had number of the users, employees, let's say 1,000 to 2,000. You can give any number. We purchased Azure subscription, Azure solutions. Along with that, we got the Azure Active Directory. That will be used for authentication, authorization for cloud-based application or the solutions we are using. What about the user accounts? What about the employees? Maybe out of these 1,000 employees, maybe 800 or 700 employees are there who gonna access that cloud application which we purchased. So one more Active Directory instance we got in there. Do we need to create the account of these 700 employees in Azure Active Directory? Initial answer is yes. Means we need to recreate the user account. But if we go with this approach, the another problem is these all 700 employees need to carry two credentials. One is on-premises, one is for on-premises application, and another credential they need to carry for cloud-based applications. And which is not the approach which that's not the approach which is followed in the organization. We should have a single source of the identities management. If it is not, we should synchronize the identity solutions. So rather than recreating the user account in an Azure Active Directory, we synchronize the user account from on-premises ADDS to Azure Active Directory. And when we synchronize those user account or the objects, those are actually called hybrid objects. Right now, we are talking about users, so those are called as hybrid user. Why hybrid user? Because those are actually those are in Active Directory, ADDS, or in Azure Active Directory. Sorry, and in Azure Active Directory. There is one more user account we do have that is called guest user account, which is used for business to business collaboration purpose. For an example, there are two organizations. One is Adatum.com, and Adatum.com has purchased some consultancy services from Contoso.com. Okay, Contoso.com is providing the service, helping in a pre-prod or production environment. So there is one engineer at Contoso.com, let's say Bhaskar is the guy, or Rick is the guy, let's say Rick at Contoso.com. Rick is the guy, which is engineer, and he has been assigned to help Adatum.com. So Adatum.com want Rick to log in, but they do not want to manage the credentials of this guy. So Adatum.com can invite Rick. If that user accepts the invitation, can log in Adatum.com. Adatum.com is not required to manage the credential of this guy, just can manage the access, because it need to have the control what Rick can do in Adatum.com. So Rick at Contoso.com can log in Adatum.com and can do the job based on RBAC configuration application has been configured for you. Okay, so whenever we go with this approach, that is called guest user account. Devices are also can be further categorized in 3 categories, almost similar concept based on who own that device. So AD joined, hybrid AD joined, AD registered. These are the 3 types of the devices. Application, those can be built-in applications or the custom application which we register. Azure application, non-Azure applications. Okay. The 4th type of the identity we do have in there, that's a managed identities. That also can be categorized into categories: system assigned or user assigned. Let system assign it, that's called system assigned identities. If we create it and assign it to some application or some instance, that is called user assigned. We'll talk about that later on. So user account, the one which we create in our Azure Active Directories, and then further we can use it for logging purpose. For an example, subscriptions. Here, portal.azure.com. So I should log in incognito mode. Portal.azure.com. Yeah, I'm logging to the account, just a match. So when I purchase Azure subscription, actually the freeware I created initially, I got the Active Directory instance, and the name of that Active Directory instance was Bhaskar Dikshit hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. This was the name I was given initially. This one. This is my XYZ. Your XYZ can be something else. So Bhaskar Dikshit hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. And if I create the user account within there, let's say user1. So what will be the UPN of that? User1 at bhaskardikshit.hotmail.com. As I said, whatsoever the purpose, you want to have your own naming conventions, own name suffix for the users, you can add the custom domain name. As I have added virtual.com in here. And I have made it primary. So further, I can go and create the user account. One more point, guys. I have added the additional name. It is not mean like we cannot use that name which was given along with that. Hotmail.com. Whichever the name I want to go with, I can go. So here I create the user account. Let's say user10 or like username. Let's look. See, I do have the options. I can go with the Bhaskar Dikshit hotmail.onmicrosoft.com or I can go with the WhatsApp. Create the user account and then account enabled. Fill up the detail. Some other things you can define, like what is the first name, last name, what will be the job title of this guy, the company, department who is a manager, or personal detail of that user account you can add in here. Then further, what level of the access given to him or her or it, you can just define that. That's a place where you can manage the group members. Okay, so here we do have the user accounts. This is the one which I got along with the subscriptions. When I use my personal email ID to register the free account, I got this one. Means my Hotmail account added here as a guest user account. The another user account I created, that's a Dikshit, and now Rick at WhatsApp and stuff. So this guy can log in further, depend on the access given to it. See here, as I log in using Dikshit, I can use this user account, Rick at WhatsApp and stuff. So I created it in Azure Active Directory. That's a cloud user account. Login first time, so we have to change the password. Logged in. And see, there is one difference here. When I logged in last time, I was able to see the subscriptions and all that stuff. But now the same Active Directory is behaving like there is no subscription available. It says would not find any subscription. You can purchase a free trial where you will get the $200 credit for 1 month, along with some free services for 1 year. Okay, or you can simply go in Azure Active Directory and can manage that. So if the access has been given to, this guy can log in and can manage the app. Okay. Can device registration, group account creation, user account, that all job can be done by this guy. So do the job, whatever the access is given to. So I just created the user account, no access is given to. If I check it out the further things, Azure Active Directory, I can see that stuff, but will not be able to perform the task. Plus, if I go in a downside of the hierarchy, subscriptions, there is no subscription which was not the case with another user account, Dikshit, because that user had the access on the downside of the hierarchy. I created that and grant the access on the downside of the hierarchy. So we have the user account. All the user need to have the access on Azure services which are created with them. Okay, so based on the role they are offering, they are doing, we grant the access to them. See that? When Dikshit logged in, you can see the 2 subscriptions. Has gone beyond the limit, so got disabled because of that. 2 subscriptions are there. Whereas the user one logged in was not able to see. So that is depend on what level of the access we grant to him, her, or it in order to perform the task or the jobs. All the users gonna have the account and they will be given the access as per their job. So user who need access, we create the account and then we grant the access as per their business profile. To further manage those user account, we have been given the group accounts. As we do have the 2 types of the group account in on-premises environment, in ADDS I mean to say, security and distributions. Here as well we do have 2 types of group account. One is called security group account and another is the M365 group account. Security account is the one, security group account is the one which is used for managing the security principles. While as M365, Microsoft 365 group account is used for information distributions, email creations and all that purpose. Okay. Further, how we can manage the membership of these groups? There are 2 ways to manage the membership. One is manual, means we can add the member in a group manually. The user or the device we want to add in, we can add that manually. Or it can be done automatically. Based on specific criteria or condition we define, users can get the membership of particular group account. For an example, we configured one group account and define the setting in there. Any user from HR department should get the membership of this group, which is known as HR group. Certain permissions are granted to this group account. So new employee join the HR department, that guy will get the membership of this group account automatically. Whatever the permission granted to it will be available for that new user also. So we can manage the membership two ways, manual and automatic. When we say automatic, for automatic we have been given one feature in Azure Active Directory that is called dynamic group account. Dynamic group account feature will be available when we have at least premium P1 license, premium P1 edition of Active Directory. Okay, when we define the group account, we define the group account for the device or for the user. This is why you see the four options over there. One is assigned, manual, and sorry, you see three options, not four, my bad. So dynamic user means we define the condition for the user or for the devices. So that device can get the membership automatically or user can get the membership automatically based on the criteria we do. Okay? And here's sometimes we get the question, Bhaskar, what if we add the user manually in that dynamic group? Or sometimes people ask the question in a reverse way. What if we remove that user which is added by the system, by the process in a group account? No, we cannot. If we have gone with a dynamic group account, we cannot manage the membership of that. Means we cannot add or remove the member manually. Only the user or the device match that criteria we define. Like I mentioned here, user from HR department, and the detail for the same is mentioned in a department column. We'll get the membership of the group account automatically. Neither we can add nor we can remove. So question is invalid here. Go in there, create the group accounts and add the members here. Right now, I do have a free editions of Active Directory. Free editions. How I can create the user account? We go in a user plate. How we can create the group account? We go in a group page or group plate, or we have the PowerShell options on this. So there we create the group account. New group account, define the type, and then define the membership. Okay, we have two types: security group account or M365 group account. Define the name, group 24. Or whatever the naming convention being followed in your organization. There cannot be any advice on that. Some description you want to put it, and here you will select a membership type. When you click on this drop down box, you'll get three options: assigned, which is selected already by default, dynamic user, and dynamic device. Okay, so you go with that, and then further you can define the conditions. I cannot click on drop down box because I do have the free edition of Active Directory. So create it and add it. What about the license? What about this paid edition of Active Directory? We have the options for the practice purpose or for evaluating the premium license of Active Directory, premium edition of Active Directory. We have been given the concept of trial license. So go in Active Directory plate, we have a license option there, license page in there. Click on that, and then further we need to click on all product. There we get the try and buy. Go there and premium P2 licenses. They are activated. Simple one button is there that's gonna activate your license. It will give me an error because I enabled the Active Directory license on it already. That will not be the case in your case. Okay, so once it is there, you can avail those features which are present. Further thing, administrative unit. So when I initially discussed Azure Active Directory, I said Azure Active Directory has the flat structure. There is no OU group policy kind of a things in there. Now let's say we have the organization, or let's say there is a university, and that university has a different verticals. Let's say a school for science, a school for arts, a school of arts, a school of science, something like that. And we have the different employees in these two schools. So the approach we have had so far, if we talk about that, let's say we want one guy to be user administrator. If we grant the access to one user as a user administrator permission, he will be the administrator of employees which are who are in a school of art and a school of science. But this is not what we want. We want there should be one user administrator for school of arts, and there should be another user administrator for school of science. So here we have been given one optional container that is called administrative unit. That's the Azure Active Directory resource. Or you can say a container for the Azure AD resources. So far, it can contain users and the groups. We create it, like here, as per my example given in there, we create one administrative unit for School of Arts and another administrative unit for School of Science. And then further, we can grant the access on these AU administrative units. We can use it for authentication administrators, we can use it for group administrators, help desk administrator, password administrators, user administrators. So different roles are there we can use it for. Can add the member in there, and then further we can grant the access. As by default, Active Directory has the flat structure. With this approach, it means if we grant some privilege, like we want someone to be password administrator, should be able to change or reset the password for non-administrators. It means that guy will be the administrator for all the users which are or who are working in different schools, different business verticals. So my organization has the different business vertical. For each vertical, I want a separate administrator, group administrator, help desk administrator, license administrators. Administrative unit can be used in that. By default, no administrative unit we do have. So we do it, create it. Okay. That's the last discussion, and further we'll take a break. I believe, yeah, that's a good time to take a break.
Yeah. Before we go on a break, sorry, Pascal, to interrupt. There are a couple of questions, and it's better if we show them on the portal. I think the first question is, how do we verify the custom domain? So if you can just go on the portal, go on the Azure Active Directory, and just show them how to verify the custom domain.
Okay.
So to have a custom domain, Azure doesn't provide you the custom domain. How do you get the custom domain? Anyone? If you want to have your own domain, how do you go about it? Simple, basic way. If I want to buy a domain name, where do I go? Domain.com or GoDaddy? Exactly. We go to the registrar. So we go to GoDaddy.com and we say, hey, I want to buy ameisawesome.com, and I buy that domain. Now, when I create users, which Bhaskar just showed you, as soon as he creates a user, by default, what domain do you get? Bhaskar also mentioned it. By default, what domain do you get? On Microsoft dot, yes. On dot, Bhaskar, if it's okay, can you just show them also? Yes. Exactly right. You guys are doing brilliantly well. So if you create a new user, by default, the user is created, for example, Bhaskar, he will be created on .on Microsoft, but we don't want that .on Microsoft.com. So we add a custom domain. So Bhaskar has already verified a couple of domains, but Bhaskar, if you go and click add custom domain, and
Yep.
he adds a new custom domain, which can be bhaskar.com, for example. That is not going to do the job. First, he needs to buy it. So he's going to buy abc.com from GoDaddy or domain.com, wherever, and then he's going to verify. Now, this is very important. Which two record types can you use to verify? Either it's going to be a txt or an mx record. So, Sunil, does that answer your question? Yes. Yes. So by default, if I want to start my own company, which is xyz.com, I cannot just create. I have my own company. I can't just start creating users like Ame at xyz.com, Bhaskar at xyz, Sunil at xyz. First, I need to buy xyz.com from GoDaddy, verify it, and then I can start using my users accordingly. Then I give them rights accordingly. Does that make sense? Yes. Sunil, does it answer? You can come off mute if that's okay. All good? Okay. Now, thank you.
Yeah, as guys I mentioned, we need to verify the ownership of that name. Whatever the name we are adding in there, we need to verify the name. So whenever we add the domain name here, it gives us the text and MX record.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the record we need to verify, be it your text record and MX record. And how we verify that? We go in a DNS service of that name. We may get the DNS service along with the name, or we can have or host our own DNS service as well. Let's say I have been given a DNS service along with the GoDaddy, means my domain name, whatever I have purchased here. I don't want to use that because it comes with some limitations. So I have hosted my own DNS service on Azure. So I can go in Azure DNS service, or I may have hosted it somewhere else. Like here, in my case, sorry, my bad. Hold on. The name I have added in there, virtualhands.in, that I have purchased from GoDaddy. And the DNS service given here, I'll go in there. Like this is a DNS service. Go there. And now I'm pretending like I have purchased this abc.com. Okay. So the text record or MX record. One of the record you need to copy, and you need to do the entry of that here. Like here, add record, and gonna add the record. Type of the record I do have text, and then name. You're gonna add that's a. Oh, sorry. Then further the value which we copied from there. This is the value I copied. Define the TTL, which is by default 3600 seconds or like 1 hour, and save it. Once it is added, it's gonna do the DNS propagation. Once propagation is done, you can come in here and verify that. Okay. The SLA for the DNS propagation, it can be up to 72 hours. Like see here, I'm trying to verify that. Not being verified because I have not actually purchased abc.com. So you have purchased it, go there, add the record, and then come in here and verify that. Once it is verified, you can start using it as I can use my virtualhands.in. I did the same job for this virtualhands.in. Okay, further I made it primary. So I go here and create the user account. As I have made that custom domain as a primary, so when I'll create the user account, I'll get it as a by default there. Hold on, please. Give it some time.
Does it matter what ID you are logged into in terms of the portal when you're verifying the domain?
Yeah, that matters. It must be global administrators.
No, as in, could the global administrator be of a personal? Could you use your personal ID for that?
Yes, I can use my personal
right?
as well, but that should have the global administrator privilege. Like here, initially I used my personal email ID to subscribe as a subscription. That was Bhaskar at hotmail.com. So if you see the access of this guy, bhaskar.dikshit@hotmail.com, this guy has been given the global administrator role. And initially I added and verified this virtual hands name, my virtual hands.in domain name using this user account. So that user should have the global administrator privilege.
Got it.
Regardless of what is the suffix it is using.
Got it.
Verify that, and once it is verified, you can start using it. Okay, you may have to wait for some time because DNS propagation must be done, and you got the error when I was trying to verify that. So you have to verify the ownership. Yes, you own that domain name. And how are we gonna do that? By adding the records in a DNS service. Okay, and it is not like you have the DNS service on GoDaddy only. Means you host your DNS service on that registrar where you have purchased it from. No, you can have your own DNS service as well. Like I can have my own DNS service here, and whatever the name servers I was given, I can add those name servers here. These are the name servers hosted and managed by GoDaddy. I can go, no, I do not want to use these default name servers. I have my own name server, add it here. I got from GoDaddy or somewhere else. Okay? So add those name servers and save it.
Yes.
Any other questions, Amit? Which
you are getting disconnected. But thank you so much. And one more question. I think it was Moses. How do we differentiate between user types? Is it a hybrid user, B2B user? So, Bhaskar, if you want to go about for it, feel free. You're on mute, buddy.
Unmuted. So here we can see that stuff. It can be you see, member or guest. And how we identify whether it is a hybrid user or not, you see the option on premises sync enabled. For cloud users or guest users, you're gonna see no. But if it has been synchronized from ADDS, you're gonna see yes option for that. Right now there is no sync user I do have, so no yes option is there. So by checking out this column, you can check it out whether it is a cloud user or hybrid user. By checking out this user type column, you can identify whether it is the user in from this Active Directory or it is the guest user account. Like here, I have added my one email that's a Bhaskar Dikshit Gmail, so I can use that one to log in there in a virtual installer. So that is something you can check it out there.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that answers all the questions. We can go for a quick break. I know all of you are dreading for a quick coffee break. I can see that even if your cameras are turned off. So we'll come back after a quick break for like say 15 minutes, Bhaskar, if that's okay. And
yep.
we'll continue. Okay, so yeah.